I love this ship. I have so much fun playing Florida basically every time I play this ship. It is one of the most accurate, consistent battleships in the game, and that is the reason it is fun. You get 12 guns with very good dispersion. So things like that just tend to happen when you play this ship. And it's at tier 7, which is amazing because you don't have to deal with tier 10 meta, which is often very campy with a lot of high DPM HE spamming kind of ships. Also, CVs at this tier tend to be less powerful than CVs at tier 10 compared to their counterparts. So, having the AA suite of essentially a North Carolina, which is a tier 8 ship, including defensive fire and all that stuff, boosting it, means that you're actually really, really, really difficult for carriers to strike, and you'll see that later on. But the combination of better than average speed at tier 7, because as we know, tier 7 battleships tend to be pretty slow, especially the American ones, and these crazy accurate guns. Oftentimes you'll see ships at tier 7 not having very accurate guns, and at tier 8 the upgrade is to get more accurate long-range guns with a higher caliber. Ships like Gneisenau come to mind with their somewhat mediocre dispersion, let's be honest. And this ship gets the good dispersion, but you have smaller guns. They're 356, so you're not overmatching very much. But that's okay. You don't really need overmatch against battleships when you're just this accurate. You can snipe out superstructures very easily, and you'll see me do that later. This ship is fun. It just is. Sure, you get a slightly longer reload, but having North Carolina maneuverability is such a breath of fresh air compared to low-tier American battleships that it makes it worth it to have perhaps a little longer reload, lower caliber guns, and maybe some not quite up to par armor. Let's be honest. You give broadside in this ship, you're going to be taking huge hits. The Citadel raises pretty far above water, and the thing is encased in 25 millimeters of plating in its bow, stern, and upper belt. The nice thing is the deck armor. You actually have 38 millimeters of deck armor, so if you angle at long ranges, you can even bounce Yamato shells, or Musashi, since you won't be facing a Yamato, but you can face a Musashi, and you can bounce his shells, assuming they hit the deck, which, is less likely, but at least it's something. Most tier 7 battleships just have their 26 or 25 millimeters of armor. I think it's 26 now that the IFHE rework went through. And they can't bounce anything. You at least get the chance to in a higher tier game. Now that's not to say you're tanky. You're obviously not very tanky. Your goal is to play at mid-range. Abuse the accuracy and the concealment of this ship, which is pretty good. It's not best in class, I don't think, but it is really, really nice. So you're going to see me often go dark and be able to surprise people. And that is kind of your thing, is surprising people with 12 guns against their broadside with very, very, very good accuracy. I love accurate, consistent battleships. Consistency is always the issue with a battleship because you have such high alpha that it's kind of unbalanced when you get crazy consistency out of it. And this ship, it pays a lot for that consistency, but getting some of that consistency back is so, so, so nice. Here you're going to see an AA example. Sure, it's a tier 6, but you'll face tier 6 carriers about half the time. And with defensive AA up, and spoiler alert, I am using BFT. We'll go over the build in a minute, but yeah, you kind of murder planes. And you're okay against tier 8s. You're not that good. They're probably going to get a strike off, but they probably won't be getting 2 strikes off, which is very comforting, and it lets you run spotter plane. You'll notice I'm also running range mod because on an American battleship, there's not really much else to run at the 2 slot. I suppose you could run turret traverse, but I don't really feel like that's necessary, and the extra range is really helpful in those tier 9 games, where sometimes maybe you're shooting HE at a battleship. We do run expert loader on this ship because it really does help in those times when you're just fighting against a tier 9 battleship that's bow into you, and you just got to switch over to HE. It really helps for those kind of scenarios. But as you can see, when it's your tier 7 and lower, I only shoot AP because your AP is really, really, really good. It's a fun ship. Sure, you got lower alpha, but the amount of shells that just hit and deal damage on target are amazing. It's so good. And you're seeing me here trying to catch people's broadsides. That's the whole playstyle. Is if people are kiting away from the A flank, well, let me go and catch their broadside as they're kiting away. That is your entire goal with this ship. And it's pretty consistent. I love it, man. If you are looking for a tier 7 premium battleship, I can't think of a lot better than this. If you're thinking, hey, maybe I want to get Strasbourg, please don't. Strasbourg is a Dunkirk with a reload booster. It is not a good ship. Dunkirk is questionable at tier 6, and to up tier it 1 tier higher, while basically only adding a reload booster, is not going to be worth it. I'm sure you've heard a lot about Jean Bart being a Richelieu 1 tier higher with reload booster, but at least a Richelieu has armor to bounce some things and shatter some HE. Dunkirk, Strasbourg, I don't think they're going to be very good. I've played Dunkirk, I know that ship, it's okay at tier 6. Strasbourg, I've only seen the stats for it, so I'm just basing this off of what a tier 6 would feel like in tier 7 Matchmaker. I haven't played it yet. Assume there's going to be a video on it eventually once I get it, because it is a campaign reward, so you can get it for free. But if you're thinking of buying a premium, this is a pretty good one, because tier 7 can be pretty fun. While the Matchmaker kind of suffers sometimes against tier 9s right now, tier 9 seems to be the blessed matchmaking tier at the moment, which usually shifts around between tier 9, tier 8, and tier 7, depending on who's going to be beat up on, being the tier 7s, 6s, or 5s. You know, I think it was like a year ago, it was tier 7 that was blessed, and you were constantly fighting tier 5s, and the tier 5s were getting beat up on, so it kind of goes around. So this is a very good ship, and as you can see in the tier 5 against tier 5s, it just kind of smashes people. It just steamrolls through, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to have a battleship that can hit things pretty hard and reasonably consistently. If you're someone who struggles and gets frustrated with battleships for their inconsistency, this one is one to consider, I would say. I think that it's not the best battleship for tanking, as you can see. I think a lot of people would say that. But if you can bait people into shooting AP that won't overmatch you into your bow, you can be pretty tanky. As you can see, that King George almost kind of got lucky to be alive with this ship. Given how accurate this ship is, you kind of start to expect dev strikes when people go broadside with bigger citadels. So that's kind of it's fun to expect big damage instead of feeling lucky to get big damage, if you know what I mean. I think that tier 7 can be one of the most fun tiers in the game because you do get these closer range fights more often. Because ships are less prone to have massive range and really good shell arcs and all that stuff. It seems like there's just more interesting games at these kind of mid tiers, I would say. I guess I would consider, for me personally, high tier is tier 8, 9, and 10. Mid tier is kind of tier 6 through 8. And then low tier is tier 5 and 4, that kind of thing. I really don't count tier 3 and lower. I know it exists, but you can get through that like in 5 battles or something like that. So that's why I kind of say this is mid tier. I associate mid tier with tier 7. So as you can see, just the CVs left. And we're basically on 200,000 damage. This is by far my best game in Florida, but that's not to say I've been doing bad. I think I'm averaging around 104,000 damage, which is pretty solid, honestly, for a tier 7 battleship. That's a little higher than most of my other ones. So, and as you can see, the carriers at this tier do take some damage, even when angled, which is another nice thing about this tier. You're never dealing with those tier 10 carriers that have insanely armored flight decks that you can never deal damage to. I was fortunate enough here to have a team that didn't kill everything so fast that I couldn't get my damage, so that's very nice. But the playstyle really is trying to find broadsides. So if you're someone who knows how to read a map, you're going to like this ship. If you're looking for a brawler, probably go play Gneiss now instead. That would be my suggestion. Or Scharnhorst even. But that one, the guns are pretty underwhelming. Whereas this one, the guns are very, very nice. You'll see we only got one Dev Strike. Dev Strikes are bugged right now, so I don't know why we didn't collect one on that York. But a really, really good game. 14 Citadels is crazy. 2.7k base, 4 kills. Pretty nice, actually. Pretty solid game. And yeah, let's take a look at the captain build. Okay, let's take a look at the captain build that I've been using here. I am using a special commander. This does give me the ability to run expert loader, minus 75% time taken to switch shell type. This is really, really useful for high tier games where you're switching shell types semi-regularly to optimize your damage. Pretty self-explanatory. Adrenaline Rush to getting your reload lower just helps you to deal more damage. Pretty simple. Superintendent is nice because you actually only get 4 heals with this ship. So with Superintendent. So you do want that extra heal. That's kind of the balancing thing, is this ship is a little squishier. So getting that extra heal, pretty nice. Now, Concealment Expert, pretty obvious, I think. Concealment 12.1 on a tier 7 battleship with this kind of firepower, very nice for surprising people. I do run Fire Prevention because if you do stay angled, you can shatter shells sometimes with your deck armor. And oftentimes, you're going to be lit on fire in multiple areas. So just as a battleship, this is a good perk. Now, you'll notice basic firing training instead of basic survivability. That's because our AA is actually really good. And buffing by 10%, which is then going to be buffed by defensive fire, it's very nice. And you saw what it did to planes. It's very good. And then as a last skill, I just take Expert Marksman because it's handy. You know, it gets your turret traverse down to 36 seconds, which is nice. You know, you shoot one salvo, you start to turn your turrets. They're probably on the other side of your ship by the time you're ready to load again. So pretty nice. Then on to the upgrades. I am running Propulsion Mod, but I think Damage Control System would also be good. Propulsion Mod is just nice for sitting in one spot, like next to an island maybe, or just speed juking back and forth, but I think probably Damage Con is probably a little better. And like I said, Range Mod is really kind of the only upgrade here. AA guns, this doesn't really help you that much with AA. Secondaries are not that useful. I have run it. They get out to 7.6 kilometer range, but at those ranges, you're not living too long. And the other option is main battery, so turret traverse, but I already think that 36 is good enough. And in those games against tier 9s, range helps you so much more than a little bit of turret traverse would. And you'll see I'm running AA mod just because I like screwing with carriers. At low tiers, sometimes they don't know what your ship is capable of, and they'll just constantly send planes at you. So it's kind of nice to be able to screw them over a little bit with defensive fire. And then main armaments. The turrets aren't super squishy, but they can get knocked out. And you'll see I am running Spotter, but you could run Fighter if you want to be a little better against carriers. But Spotter's pretty cool. You can get crazy range with it and maybe snipe a CV or something like that. That's up to you. So yeah, that's the Florida. I really, really like this ship, guys. I think it is very, very good. And you'll see, sure, it's got some weaknesses in the armor department, but the guns more than make up for it. And if you angle like this and, you know, you're at longer ranges, you know, people might hit your deck and you'll be able to bounce and shatter a few things. So thank you for watching, guys, and I hope you have a great day.